You'll now be joined by Dan Seeger. He's he's the RPA practice lead and one of the senior consultants who supports us here in Europe and works with our customers in the European team. And I've sort of asked him to sort of walk you guys through what these two trends I was talking about, how AI is coming into the RPA and task use cases, and how we're finding more and more that the technology is better at handing off work between a human and a robot and back again. So how does that look? What is the art of the possible now? What's the state of the art about that? And I guess without further ado, Dan, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Brack. I'm just going to share my screen and start off with a few slides, and then we'll kind of get into a bit of a demo.
Dan is doing the live demo on Driven virtually, so he's the bravest of all of us, really.
Yeah, he's the one that's most nervous about it. No, it'll all be good. Okay, as Brack said, my name is Dan Seeger. I'm essentially an automation consultant here in the UK at BP3. I'm going to take you through kind of a use case, and if you've seen RPA before, it's going to be a use case that you kind of recognise because it's a big problem for a lot of people. But hopefully we'll take a kind of a different perspective on the way that we're trying to tackle it with automation. Before I get into that, and before I jump into the demo, I just want to touch on a couple of concepts. So you'll hear in the RPA space and the automation space, two different types of automation: unattended automation and attended automation. And we're going to touch on both of those in the demo. So unattended automation generally runs in the background. It's probably running on a VM in your data center somewhere, and it's really best placed for high volume transactional processes that require no human intervention. Whereas attended automations kind of work hand in hand with your user. The robot is responsible for the things that it does well, so well-defined repetitive parts of the task, and then the user can be responsible for making judgment calls, and we can hand off between the user and the robot at a number of different points inside of those automations. So following on from that, what I'd like to do is sort of give you a demo of where we use both of these kind of types of automation to solve elements of the invoice matching process as a whole. So the unattended automation to process the high volume invoices, applying the rules to check that they match the purchase orders. And then we'll use attended automation to assist the user in correcting any exceptions that may occur during that matching process. Because it's not going to be we're not going to match invoices to purchase orders 100% of the time. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother doing it, right? So there are going to be exceptions, and we need to have an element of human intervention and human judgment in that process. Okay, so what's involved in the invoice matching process? In its simplest form, what we're doing is checking the data that on the invoice is what we've expected. Now, this means that we need to validate the data against the corresponding purchase order that's going to be held in our ERP system. For a human being, matching the process or the matching process is pretty trivial, but it's a time-consuming one. So they'll do things like check the purchase order number, the lines, the totals, and that's really the easy part. But opening the documents, navigating the systems, dealing with the exceptions is where we're kind of losing time, and we can be best placed kind of doing other parts of the process that are best suited to what people do best, right? For the robot, on the other hand, doing the checking and the navigation is the easy part of the process for it. But being able to kind of interpret what an invoice actually is, extract the data and deal with the exceptions is a far tougher prospect for a robot to kind of to handle. Really. Okay, so if we think like a couple of years ago, automating that end-to-end invoice matching process would have taken a number of different technologies. So things like OCR, complex rules and scripting to extract the data. And then we'd probably end up with a custom application or ticketing system to bring a human into the loop. And then we'd use kind of conventional RPA to perform the navigation and the matching type tasks, the kind of screen scraping, all that navigation stuff. But with kind of advancements in intelligent document processing and the introduction of forms builders into RPA vendors' products, we now have the ability to use a single platform to automate that entire end-to-end process. So in the demo, we're going to look at how we can use intelligent document processing to extract or semi-structured data from our invoices, and then how unattended and attended automation can be used to automate our invoice matching process. Okay, so let's just dive out of here and we'll go into a bit of a demo, and I'll kind of hopefully give you an example of how all this fits together really. So before I kind of get into what the automated process is going to do, I just want to kind of talk about or talk through what the manual process actually looks like. So if you think, you know, you've got your maybe accounts administrator that's monitoring an inbox of invoices that are coming in. You know, as those invoices come in, they want to match them up with the purchase orders in the ERP system. So you know, they're generally going to launch each of the invoices, have a look at the data, and then launch their ERP system or navigate the ERP system if it's running already. So here we go. We've launched our ERP system. We've got our invoice over here. I'm then going to kind of do a bit of navigation. So we're going to need to find our purchase order inside of the ERP. So I need my purchase order number 56443. There it is. Open up the purchase order. And then, like I said, this is the kind of easy bit for a person to do. You know, check the purchase order numbers right, check my line items just at a glance, and the values are right, and then check the balance. But in this case, you know, there's no sales tax applied to it, so it might be that we need to kind of review this in more detail. You know, then I'd, you know, close this one, go on to my next invoice, and kind of repeat the process really. So as I said before, not a particularly difficult process, but a time-consuming process and pretty boring and laborious one at that. Okay, so one of the problems that we've got though is when we come to automate this, you know, me reading from the invoice is an easy way of extracting data, right? I'm good at that. I can read, so great. That's a good start. And I know it's an invoice because I can see it's got an invoice written on it. But for a robot or for automation, that's quite a tough prospect. But fortunately for us, what we can do is use intelligent document processing. So here, if I just expand this. So what I've done for this particular demo is that I've created what's called a learning instance. And what a learning instance allows me to do is interrogate an example of a document and teach the machine learning algorithm what different elements on that document actually represent, so that it can then extract that data for me. So I've got all sorts of different document types inside of here, but the invoice matching extraction one is the one I'm interested in, and I can just have a quick look at some of the sort of statistics around that. I've processed 121 documents, 98% straight through processing, 100% accuracy. Great. So let's just have a quick delve into what actually goes into setting up a learning instance. So when I created this, I kind of gave it an example of the document that I'm going to process, so an invoice. And what I did was I selected the kind of document type of it being invoice, and it kind of said to me, well, I know that an invoice has got an invoice number, a date, a total, etc., and line items. And from that, it's then kind of made a best guess at what it thinks are those particular elements. And when I first did this, it was pretty spot on, to be honest with you. So if we just click through this, you can see that the invoice number is going to extract the invoice total down at the bottom of the document and some of the line items. What it will do for me is if for instance, it processes a document that it can't validate 100%, it will put that into a queue for a user to go into that and do some validation. And as they fix any errors with it, they put it back through the machine learning algorithm, so that over time it's going to become more confident in what it's doing, and you're going to get better straight-through processing statistics. Okay, so let's just save that. So this will enable me now to be able to take invoices that are coming into my queue, send them to the intelligent document processing, and that will then return to me data in a format that I can then ingest using the robot, essentially. Okay, so let's just get that over there. Now, what I'm going to do here is we're going to have a robot running in the background, and it's going to be monitoring my email inbox. So before I do anything, I'm just going to send a new email of invoices into this particular process. So because I'm running Zoom, it might take a second or two to just fire into here. But we should see a new invoice or a new email hit my inbox any second. Could do with some music to play whilst he's doing this. Here we go. So once that invoice hits my inbox, and there it is, the robot's going to take over and start to process those invoices that are attached to that email. What I've done is I've added a number of points in the process where it's just going to kind of wait so that we can look at what's happening sort of step by step. So the first thing it's done is it's tried to access my inbox. I'm going directly to Outlook for this particular process, just for illustration purposes really, but this would be, you wouldn't see that in the background in a real life situation. So the robot's now kind of giving me a message. It's the new invoices have been received and attachments downloaded. So let's just open this up. So it's downloaded these into a folder on the C drive. Okay, so if we look at this, 2 invoices attached, and here they are. So let's let that go a little bit longer. So next, what it's going to do is start to take those invoices and push them up to this learning instance so it can extract the data. So while it does that, if we just jump into this folder, and you can see that we've got this little spinning wheel now that is doing some processing. And as it does this, you'll see the documents as they're processed appear in this folder. Here we go. So my 2 invoices, and as it processes each of those particular invoices, we're going to get a CSV file produced as output. Okay, so that's done. So invoice data has been extracted, my 2 invoices, and here is my output. So let's just have a quick look at this. So this is now in a form that's kind of more easily processed by the robot, essentially. So there's one of our invoices, which has got 1 line. Let's just have a quick look at the second one. Again, so this particular invoice has got 4 invoice lines, so you can see the line items, the unit values, or the unit prices, the quantities and totals, essentially. Okay, so now that we've kind of extracted that data, we can now hand it off to a kind of conventional RPA automation that's going to take that data and actually do the invoice matching process. So let's let that go. So you see it's now fired up the ERP system as I did before manually. It's going to do a bit of navigation to find out, to go to the right place. Finds the invoice, the purchase order, and now it's doing checking those particular attributes against the invoice and purchase order. Here's the second one. Awesome. All good. We're done. So a lot quicker than I could have done it. However, now that it's processed those invoices, we need to kind of check to see what has been matched and what exceptions we've got. So if we look in the match, so there's a few in here that I did earlier, so you can see the kind of dates and times on these. I did these earlier today. So one of those invoices that we processed was matched successfully, which is great. However, if we go into our exceptions, so we've got one of the invoices that we tried to process has failed to be matched. So there's a problem between the invoice and the purchase order. Helpfully, it's given us, or create a file for us that's got the reason why it can be matched for each of these invoices. So the line total does not match the purchase order. And here's another one. Now, without any kind of automation, I'd have to drop back to my kind of business as usual process. I'd have to navigate to my ERP system, do the matching process manually, and you know, that's going to be a real pain for me, right? However, we can make use of attended automation to give us a bit of a digital assistant. So if I just launch that, give me 1 second. And what the digital assistant will do is make use of some of the automations that we've already created. You know, we've got automations to do things like navigate the purchase order and or navigate the ERP system to find the purchase order. We've also got the rules that we've built into our automation to do the invoice matching. So rather than me have to do that manually, why don't we kind of bake that into a digital assistant so that we can do that automatically. So my machine's on a bit of a go slow, but give me a second. Right. So I'm just going to get rid of these for a second. So my digital assistant is just about to kind of launch for me. Here we go. So what we've done here is, as I said before, so some of the vendors have actually kind of baked into the product the ability to create forms to allow you to kind of surface data to your users so that we can interact with our automations. So in this case, what I've done is I've created this digital assistant that allows us to surface up all of the relevant data about the exceptions that have occurred during the invoice matching process. So if I select this first invoice, it's going to load up the invoice for me so that I can see what's going on in there, and it's loaded up the actual exceptions as they appear. Let's just go for this one, it's a bit more interesting. So now, rather than me have to kind of fire up the ERP system and fix any problems, what I can do is hit my Find Purchase Order button, and that makes use of some of the automations that we've already created to do that navigation for me and find the purchase order. So this is kind of hands off, look, not doing anything, navigating to the right purchase order, and now it's handed control back to me so that I can actually do what I do best and solve the problem. So we can see that there's a problem with the invoice line. So let's just have a quick look at our invoice. So I can see that this particular line should be $2.99. So clearly somebody's forgotten to put the price in. So we can make that $2.99. And let's just check our balance. So $754.50. Ah, that's wrong as well. Oh, there's no sales tax on that. So we can add our sales tax to it. Great, save it. And rather than me have to kind of think about what I need to check to make sure this matches, I can then make use of the other automation that we used as part of our unattended automation to match the invoice. So that's going to go back in now and check to see whether what we've got from the invoice now matches the purchase order. Apply the rules that I've forgotten, and it's done it successfully, right? Great, and that's been removed from my list. So I no longer have to kind of go through the whole rigmarole of navigating, remembering what I need to check, etc. That's all baked into my digital assistant for me. So that's a kind of good use of both of those kind of unattended and attended automations. So I'm just going to skip back to my presentation. Bear with me. Okay, so before I hand back to Barack, I just want to kind of do a bit of a recap, just so that it's ingrained in everybody's head. So using our unattended digital worker, we use the kind of intelligent document processing to interpret and extract data from invoices. And then using sort of conventional robotic process automation, we're able to orchestrate that entire process. That's things like monitoring the inbox for invoices coming in, or emails with invoices coming in, interacting with our ERP system, and matching and categorizing invoices based on predefined business rules. And then our kind of attended use case, or our digital assistant, that gave us kind of a consolidated view of the exceptions that occurred during the matching process. Importantly, we reused existing automations to assist the user with the navigation and matching. So, we've already created these automations and we're using those in an unattended use case, but why not use those in an attended one as well? We've got all that good stuff already. And probably most importantly, it orchestrates the handoffs between the robot and the user to make best use of the skills that each one of those different participants in the process sort of brings to it as a whole.